You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paweta, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. Welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. Today, my guest is Tyler Mount. He is the founder and CEO of Henry Street Collective. It is a branding and digital strategy agency. And today we're going to speak about marketing, about personal branding, and about all things marketing strategy. Hi, Tyler. It's great to have you on Ideas and Leaders.
Thank you so much for having me, Elena. I'm excited to be here.
So, Tyler, I know that you have your unique approach to marketing that you're practicing in your company. So can you tell us a little bit about your story and what is this approach and how did you get to understand and practice this approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the traditional marketing function, the traditional marketing agency, I hate to say, is becoming more and more obsolete. It's a dying industry. Just like print advertisement slowly died and was replaced by digital, we have found that the traditional marketing function within organizations is not as beneficial to consumers as it once was. I focus on a specific niche within marketing, which I call and is commonly referred to as personal brand. How can I ensure less about the company, less about the product being advertised, and more about the thought leaders and the people who are in charge of that company? I work a lot with real estate agents. I work a lot in healthcare. I work a lot in lifestyle, food and beverage. And what's really important to note is consumers statistically care more about the people running the organization and what they stand for and who they are than they do the actual product. Because at this point in our world, there are exceptions to this rule, but there are very few absolutely unique standalone ideas. You think about most products, there's a competitor, right? So what you're doing isn't necessarily unique. It's how you're doing it and the thought leadership that goes behind the product that's most important. So I really focus on the people at the organization, the people, the founders, the CEOs of the companies versus this is the product we're selling. And we find that to be really, really imperative and successful when you talk about a go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, I think that definitely this focus is changing a little bit, and we are connected more to people than to products. So definitely this is a very good niche. And I know that many leaders, many business leaders, many entrepreneurs, they're listening to our podcast, Ideas and Leaders, and they might be wondering now, oh, this is interesting. I want to build my personal brand as well online. I want to promote my services online. So if someone wants to start with this strategy of building their personal brand and through the personal brand promoting their services, what should we start with?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I would say is we have to ensure that I stress that every single leader on earth should be concerned about their personal brand, because it doesn't ensure just the integrity of the company you're running or own today. It ensures the integrity of your future work products. That's number one. To answer your question, very matter of fact, the first thing we have to do is really come to terms with who we are authentically. And I know that's a larger, more macro activity, because I can't say, Elena, go figure out who you are and who you are authentically, and you go do it in 15 minutes and come back and say, Tyler, that's checked off. It comes with time, and it's more of a vantage point in which we tell our story. Knowing that that is happening in parallel, the work, the action items that we really start with is building your digital ecosystem. So again, no matter who you are, I believe every single founder, entrepreneur on earth should have a personal website. I think that's really important because it's the epicenter of your digital ecosystem. It's the only place that's completely customizable. It's the only place where I can in a very bespoke way, tell my narrative, right? And so something like that is really, really necessary. Website. From there, we talk about your social profiles. Why are social profiles so important? Well, regardless of your opinion about them, whether you like them or hate them or you're somewhere in between, they are highly searchable and indexable. That's why when you search your first and last name, you're probably getting a business profile, but you're also probably getting your Instagram and your LinkedIn because those are highly searchable and highly indexable products. And so if you don't have updated accounts that are consistently updated and showcase who you are personally, not just in business, you are leaving consumers on the ground. Why? Because they get there and they perceive you to not have all of your stuff together, right? Not that that's factually accurate, but they perceive that to be true. So ensuring that the digital ecosystem, when I search your first and last name on Google, regardless of your experience, regardless of how good you are, how new you are, it doesn't matter. We have to ensure that blind consumers who do not know who you are have a really good understanding of who you are and what you stand for. And it starts with the digital ecosystem. And that's step one to get started.
Yeah, so we need to have our website, we need to have our social media profiles, updated ones. And definitely that made me think that I need to update my Twitter account because some of the
100%.
profiles I'm using and some I'm just not using. So, but I need to keep them updated at least.
Absolutely. And we don't have to update them daily. I'm not asking you to sign on, for another full-time job, which is updating every platform 5 times a day. What I am saying, though, is ensuring that it's not a dead profile so that when people Google you, they go to your Twitter or your X profile and find, oh, wow, this person doesn't exist on this platform, or this person hasn't posted in 3 years. That implies that your business hasn't transacted in 3 years, which we know isn't necessarily correlated, but it's the user's perception. And if we have the ability to shift that, we certainly should.
Yes, absolutely. So we need to at least every, couple of months on some platforms that are not active, we need to update it. And also I know that some of the people that I talk with, entrepreneurs, they don't like to show themselves too much. And I know that there are people who are posting videos and reels every day, talking to a camera is nothing, and they come up with some creative ideas. But some people, they want to be behind their business and they produce some content, but they have some doubts of being in front of it. So what would you say to such people who are in doubt whether to go all in and to start promoting themselves and their face, whether to start or not?
Yeah. So the unfortunate reality is that advocating publicly for your company is part of the job description of an entrepreneur, right? It would be really weird, Elena, for you to not promote your podcast, right? Why have it? The same thing is true with your company or your product. I want you to think of any company or any product on earth. I started today's conversation being like, you almost always have a competitor, right? Red Bull energy drink. Okay. Who is your competitor? Monster energy drink. Is Red Bull's formula so proprietary that it doesn't do what Monster energy drink does? No, they both have caffeine, probably, and guarine in it, gives you a caffeine buzz and you're not as tired. Okay. However, if we know more about the brand, the ethos of the brand, whether that is the leaders of the organization or just the tonality of the company, we have an impulse of who or what we want to transact with. I use this example all the time, individually owned businesses. So think of real estate agents, think of lawyers, insurance agents, even plastic surgeons who are working not via insurance, but out of pocket, right? You could go to tens of thousands of plastic surgeons to get your nose job, right? The reason you choose your plastic surgeon is because of the person performing the surgery, right? So just going online and talking about why you should get rhinoplasty is kind of foolish, right? The conversation should be, why do you want to come to me to do your rhinoplasty? And so that is personal brand working at its most fundamental level. And in order for that to happen, I need you to be in front of the camera. You're the differentiator. And so that is really, really important. There are very few exceptions to this rule, but being an entrepreneur also implies that you're going to be an advocate and a spokesperson for the organization, which involves you being in the public eye. I understand that's not everyone's strong suit. I understand it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and there are ways to circumvent that within reason. But I do have to stress that as an entrepreneur, your job is to promote the company, which oftentimes means you have to be in front of the camera and in front of the product.
Yeah, so definitely this is part of our job if we want to promote our company, if we want to promote our product, but also what should we do? Because there are some people, like, for example, we have Gary Vaynerchuk, who is like, says that you need to be all the time online and you need to post 5 times a day on every platform. And I think that for many people, it is too much and they just don't have as much time. So what would you recommend to people who are starting not to overdo it and overstress themselves and actually focus on sales and operations as well, not only on marketing? What is the smart way of starting, of coming up with your strategy, personal brand strategy?
Right. Whenever I work with clients, my number one goal outside of increasing the success of their business and their personal brand is to reduce overwhelm. And Gary Vee is very outspoken about you need to be posting on every platform 5 to 7 times a day. And look, he has analytics that back that up. I'm not sitting here and saying that he's wrong. What I am saying is that is not sustainable to the overwhelming majority of business owners or individuals. Why? Because Gary Vee has $1 million 21-person content team. If I had 21 people doing content for me, I would post 5 times on most platforms as well. It's not sustainable and it's not feasible for the majority of owners. Instead, I focus on what is sustainable, what is scalable. And for me and the majority of my clients, it's being on social regularly, 3 to 5 times a week. And even further, how can I set up process so we get tons of content at once? For example, instead of saying, Elena, I need you to post content 3 to 5 times a week, so record 3 to 5 reels a week, I say, let's have a video shoot once every quarter. Let's get 30 to 40 reels in that time. In 2 hours, you won't have to deal with it the rest of the quarter. That opens people up to still be able to check the box of marketing on social. They're still in front of the brand. They're still there. People who come and look at the brand will see that this content is consistent and being updated. But to your point, they can focus on more important money-making activities. Social is an accreditation tool, and it takes a long time to become a money-making endeavor. However, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We have to start today to further accreditate ourselves. And then the next step being, we have to ensure that it eventually becomes a lead generating source, which it will if managed properly across 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I think it's a great approach to reduce overwhelm rather than add overwhelm, because I think that very often coming up with your personal brand strategy and communication strategy, it is connected with stress. I have to do so much, I have to post, I have to record something all the time. But with your strategy that you're suggesting, so we can just record the content for 1 day and then post it for a couple of weeks or months. What would you recommend how to find those ideas for the content? Because website is clear. We just list our services, our products, and that's it. But socials, you have to come up with ideas all the time. So how to do it?
Yeah. I always say that social media is machine and it's a beast, and we always have to feed the machine with content. And the unfortunate fact about social is it's not really good to repeat content. So once you say something once, we have to come up with something brand new. Okay. And so I personally handle this again in a very clear process. So if you were to look at my social accounts, it would look like I have a videographer following me around all day. Okay. You have me all over what looks like New York City posting content twice a week. Okay. When in reality, I shoot that for 2 hours every quarter. I change my outfit 30 times that day. just so it appears as if I'm creating content regularly. Okay. However, the hardest part is not hiring the videographer or setting aside 2 hours a quarter. It's what am I going to talk about? And a lot of my clients and previously myself would sit down and say, okay, what am I going to talk about today? And that typically sets us up for failure, right? We're like hoping to be inspired 30 times in a row in a matter of minutes. It doesn't work that way. So what I've started to do is I have a note in my iPhone called blog ideas. And anytime I see something on social, I'm talking to a client and I get inspired, I immediately go over to this note and I write it down. So every quarter, whenever it's time to shoot, I have 25, 30 ideas and I just go down the list and I record them. I do it in real time when I am naturally inspired for content, so I don't have to sit down and dedicate additional time. And let's be clear, some of the best ideas are stolen. Okay. I never claim it to be my idea, but if I see something funny on social that I want to copy or I want to do that trend, then I'll just put it in my notes and I'll replicate it. Right. My goal is to be producing content consistently. Some of that content lands really, really well and gets great engagement. Some of it doesn't land at all. And that's, that's the beauty of this. Why? Because digital marketing and brand marketing is an art. It's not a science. And so we can't really predict it. So that's how I do it. I just have an ongoing list of ideas. So I never have to sit down and really put pen to paper.
That is a great tip. I will start a note on my iPhone
Yeah.
as well, because I caught myself, a couple of times. I'm reading a book and, oh, this is so amazing. I should write a post about it on LinkedIn or on Instagram. And then next day, I don't remember,
Of
in
course
within a
not.
couple
I
of
just
days.
do it in real time. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I start creating my content, I sit down and suddenly all ideas, they just go away.
Yeah, they just disappear, right? That's what happens to us as humans when we sit down and say, okay, come up with really good ideas and 30 of them in 30 minutes, right? It's impossible. So I
Yeah.
deleted that obligation and I just focus on doing it in real time.
Yeah, this is so great. I'm starting this file right now. I hope our listeners will do it as well to get more ideas. So, Tyler, you're working with many clients in many industries on the communications strategy, personal branding strategy. So, what are some of the common mistakes that you see people do that you can advise us to avoid?
Yes. So the number one thing that I see clients doing that I believe to be a massive mistake is being on social to sell something. Right. And that's very common. We might not want to be on Instagram. And the only reason we're on Instagram is to promote our product. I get it. Okay. However, it's not an effective tool to sell. Why? Because there's something in the world called sales resistance. The second a telemarketer calls you, you're like, I didn't ask for this. I'm busy. I'm not interested. Right. The second you start getting on your Instagram and saying, hey, if you're looking for personal brand coaching, give me a call. Or this is important. Do you have questions about digital marketing? Email me at blah, 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 right? It starts to feel as if I'm only on this platform to sell you something. And the golden rule of social content is that social is a venue to connect. It's not a venue to sell. And so the number one thing we have to do is remove all aspects of sales content. If you're pushing a product, it needs to go. It instead needs to focus on you. And that product can be a part of the strategy. It can be a part of what you do. But in terms of the overarching sentiment is that social profile should be dedicated to you, the human being who happens to be an entrepreneur, who also might be a father or a mother, who also might be an avid travel enthusiast or raise, I don't know, horses or love baseball or is a scuba diver. All of those things make you a multi-hyphenate, which makes me want to do business with you more than you trying to get me to buy something from you. So number one is removing all sales content. Number two is getting rid of anything that is hyper designed. And what I mean by hyper designed is if you're in Canva creating tons of educational posts about here are 3 digital marketing tips, no one cares. right? It's going to underperform. It always does. Instead, I need you to be in front of the camera telling me those tips. I want you to give me a vulnerable account about how you bought into this thing in digital marketing and it didn't serve you, right? I really need to get rid of anything that feels like stock content or hyper design and isn't personal. And then the final thing that I think people do on social that is detrimental is lacking authenticity. So many people are like, well, I act this way on social because that's what insert any career on earth should act like. This is how real estate agents should act. This is how entrepreneurs should act. When I say who says so, there's no manual. I want you to focus on being you. Imagine what would have happened to Virgin if Richard Branson wore a suit and tie everywhere and acted like a formal, quiet CEO. He revolutionized the company by leaning into his personal brand before people called it personal brand. So those are the three major things. I couldn't distill it down to one, but those
Mm.
three things effectively can really redefine your social strategy.
Yeah, so we should remove all the sales from socials. We should be more authentic and we should not over design our posts and make it more natural. And about this authenticity, I wanted to ask you because I think that very often we have this barrier and I have it as well. And what I see that people have their like they have professional life and they have private life and they don't want to show, for example, their kids or their dogs or wives and husbands and partners online. And very often we hear that we should be authentic, we should show our life, not only business. So what is your opinion on it? Should we actually show the private stuff or is it just business is enough?
Yeah. So not only should we show our personal life, but we almost have to, right?
Mm.
And let me be very clear. I am not sitting here and advocating for, and I've never pushed any parent to show their children if that is a security concern for them. I will never push that. Okay. That is not the conversation we're having. If you are genuinely concerned about your children's privacy and you don't want them on your Instagram, fine. Let's move on to a different subject. However, there are so many other aspects of your personal life than just children. Your partner, okay, we're not really concerned about their safety. They're an adult. Okay. Your hobbies, you going on vacation, there's no reason we can't showcase that. Your love yoga, there's no reason we can't show that and shouldn't show that. Why? Because we know consumer behavior analytically. This is not my opinion. If you do yoga and I do yoga, I am more likely to transact with you because of it, no matter what you sell. It's exclusively because you speak my language and I have a commonality with you. And so ensuring that we showcase those personal aspects are really, really, really necessary to move the needle of sales. I know it sounds insane, but you are going to sell more, whatever it is you sell. Let's say real estate. You're going to sell more real estate by showcasing your love shopping at Chanel and a really cute cocktail bar than you will ever sell showing me the exterior photo of a home that says for sale, $500,000, right? So that's
Yeah.
how I always lead my clients. Let's showcase personal as much as we're willing to share, as long as it doesn't breach your private life, or your children's safety. Everything else should be fair game.
Yeah, I think that is so interesting and really valuable to our listeners to know that and to hear this one more time, that it is important. And what I notice, for example, on my socials is when I post my children or my vacation posts, or recently I posted that I have a new hobby and I'm making pictures, photos. So many people are reaching out and I can see that those posts, they are much more engaging for people than some, that I'm organizing a webinar or about my, podcast episodes. So something that people can connect with somehow on a certain level, it is so interesting for them and they start to engage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, Tyler, to sum up our conversation, what would be your top tips to our listeners? What should we start doing and stop doing to have a good personal brand and marketing strategy?
I love it. So first and foremost, overarchingly, you need to accept the fact that we have to lean into personal brand holistically. How do we do that? We have to reconcile the fact that your product, despite the fact that you think it's unique, is probably similar to another product in the market right now. And you and your thought leadership is the differentiator in the space. So leveraging that is key to grow the brand. How do we do that? We show up authentically as yourself, not what you think a leader or an entrepreneur should act like, genuinely yourself. Number two, we post content that is relevant to you, that is both professional and business minded, but also personal. We do not sell things on social, meaning we do not have a strong call to action that says, go to my website and purchase my webinar. No, it is all about, hey, I am this human being. This is what I do. This is what I represent. We're all in business. I have a social media account so people can go there, look, and transact. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you will never find me really push any of my services or any of my products because I want people to know, like, and trust me so that me closing the deal is much easier. And then finally, we have to be consistent on these platforms and pay attention to the digital ecosystem. My favorite exercise is after you listen to this, get online, open Google Chrome, open an incognito browser, meaning all of your cookies, your cache, your history goes away, and you type in your first and last name. If you have a common first and last name, you do first name, last name, and your job title, and see what comes up. This has to be looked at unbiasedly, meaning you have to forget how good you think you are, how new you are, how much legacy you have in your company, how much you sold, how little you sold. I don't care. Consumers are Googling you and they're making an assumption based on that. So if it isn't up to par, we have an issue. And the good news is we can fix it really quickly. So those are the biggest tips, but the overarching conversation is always leaning into the power of personal brand.
Yeah, really. It is so important to have this great personal brand right now. And what I noticed that we sometimes judge people by this personal brand, not by the quality of their services or products, but from this first moment we start judging. So it is so important what you do. And I think that I really recommend our listeners to reach out to Tyler. When you listen to this, where is the best way to get you, Tyler, your website?
Yeah, absolutely. So I offer, and my team offers, free digital consultations, free, no catch, to anyone who wants one. So you can just go to my website, tylergmount.com. And there you can schedule a call with one of my auditors or one of my digital strategists. They'll sit down with you. They'll go through that digital ecosystem that I was just talking about, make recommendations. And of course, if you want to work together, then they'll walk you through next steps there. There's no obligation. I just want to be able to spend 30 minutes with business leaders and founders from across the globe and help them and point them in the right direction. So feel free to do that at tylergmount.com.
Perfect. We'll definitely share the website in the show notes. And thank you for offering this gift to our listeners, the free consultation. I really recommend everyone to use it because it is so important to know what is the state of our personal brand and which direction we should go. Thank you so much, Tyler, for being on Ideas and Leaders. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing all the tips and all of your wisdom and knowledge about personal branding and communication. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Elena. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.